I once knew a veteran who couldn't cut a tomato.
That is the kind of thing that helps you either pivot
Yeah.
or commit.
And for most people, that might sound small, but when you can't prepare a meal or cut your own food, independence starts to slip away.
We created a circle where your hand is the center of the circle. And this is what we call the primary grip because there's 162
Yes.
degrees of cutting area.
The different grip options and cutting motions you can use with this knife.
Where we made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Today's guest decided to change that story.
This being a very, very old multitasking tool.
I once knew a veteran who couldn't cut a tomato, not because he didn't know how, just because his hands wouldn't cooperate anymore. You see, years of service and for our military left him with injuries in his hand and limited dexterity and strength. And for most people, that might sound small, but when you can't prepare a meal or cut your own food, independence starts to slip away. Today's guest decided to change that story, not just for himself, but for millions of people who struggle with mobility or hand control. He's a veteran, an inventor, and the creator of one of the most revolutionary kitchen tools I've ever seen. His name's Doug Katz, and he's joining us from his bunker today. And Doug, it's great to have you on the show. I appreciate you spending some time.
Thank you, man. That intro gives me imposter syndrome, but thank you for the lead in.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you take some time, especially on a holiday, and it's good to. SwagAbility loves uh, our military and our veterans, and we want to do everything we can to support them. But you've created a great story and a great career, and now you've created a great product, and we want to make sure we get this out, not just to many million people I think it helped, but for me, I think just the disabled community that follows me, I think is going to fall in love with this knife. Before we talk about the knife, what took a man named Doug from West Point Military to service and to the point where he decided he would create adaptive kitchen tools such as the NULU knife?
It's a great question. It's interesting because I wish I could say it was more deliberate. Going into the military I was fortunate to get an appointment to the military academy at West Point. Served my 5 years as an artillery officer. Um, but that was kind of where the deliberate plan sort of ended, right? I was fortunate enough to have my choice what branch I went into and where I got posted. But when I got out, um, you know, at that time, I got out in '98, and the economy was great. You could leave the military, double your salary. And I did what a lot of people did. I got out and I went into corporate America. That was, I think, the last vestige of the corporate America that people
Yeah.
think of, where there's loyalty to employees and there is, a structure that was set up for innovation and other things. So I struggled. I started out in the rail industry of all places, and then moved into technology in the telecom industry, which, as everybody knows, crashed at a certain point, early 2000s, and went into lending. But none of them really gave me the enjoyment that I'm finding now. And I'm like a lot of people. I think there was a compelling hobby. I was very enamored with making knives. It was when um, Forged in Fire, the show that is on the History
Mm.
Channel, and now I think it's in syndication everywhere. It was really big. People were making knives, and I loved the idea of functional art. And had the my wife got me a lesson to learn how to make, or a class to learn how to make knives. So I was doing that, and during that same time, for me, I was lucky. I didn't. My service didn't direct, like I didn't lose a limb or have a direct thing when I left the military. Uh, in my upper body, my lower body's terrible, but I had upper extremity issues that just weren't
Mm.
documented. And the way the military works If you can't document it, you don't get the
Right.
disability for it. But it didn't make me any less disabled. And during a particularly bad time, I still have carpal tunnel. I still have arthritis and a lot of other issues, tendonitis. But when my shoulder needed reconstruction, literally my right arm was pretty useless. And so I couldn't make knives. I like to cook. And really, two things that gave me pleasure were both limited by my
Mm.
situation. And I was, I think I've always been about optimization and um, designing things or doing things in a way that's the least time, least effort, all of that. Maybe it's because I'm lazy naturally, but a good lazy. Um, and was in my garage, my shop. I've got a pretty large shop, and there were just some interesting shapes. And I knew of the ulu, and the ulu is an Inuit knife.
Yeah.
That's a very versatile knife. And I've been playing around with some of the designs, but it occurred to me, why does an ulu work? And that's where the inspiration.
What is an ulu shape? I'm sorry to cut you off there, Doug. What's the shape of an ulu look like? Just to r r
The ulu is basically, if you were to think of this, right? Like where my hand cuts it off,
yes.
sorry for the shadow, and more of a one pin. What we've done is we've taken
Uh,
this further because we did some reverse engineering as to why it worked. And it's interesting along this journey, because I've been more engaged with the disabled community. And before, like when you and I
yeah.
were talking in pre-interviews and stuff, talking about disability being sort of not
Mm,
an identity, it's a state that you move into and out of in varying
yes.
degrees in your lifetime. Um, and that started making us think
Mm,
about universal design, where I think if you had talked to me 6 months ago, a year ago, it would have
yeah.
been adaptive design. But I'm really starting to understand more of this universal design, and that's really what drove more of the design to say, well, wait a minute, this is
Mm.
good for everybody, and that's been actually some of our
What about if I can ask maybe a little bit more personable, I a little personal. I know, some of your upper extremity challenges of caring for your father, did that fall into line with also what was inspiration?
It totally did, and it actually shaped the theory behind some of our design is what we call the ability curve at NULU, and when we sort of did cart before the horse, right? This is my first product startup, and we made it. We actually had significant prototyping, and then kind of stopped and said, well, wait a minute, if we're going to ask people for money, pardon me,
Yeah.
we need to be able to proof out a market size. When you think of disability, too many times people
Yeah.
overlay visible cues of what they think disabled people look
Yep.
like. Age is a disability. If you do it right, it's less of a disability. But I have a
Yeah.
tattoo, and I don't know if you could see it here. It's hard to see. That was a bad way to do it. But it's of Father Time
Both win
here and Mother Nature. And I do that. I put it on
every time.
because biology wins. It's undefeated. And if you look at things that way and you look at disability as a universality, and I would go so far as to say, and this is highly shaped by my Army experience, my time at West Point, because the way that Army especially looks at things is what task are you doing,
Mm,
to what conditions and what standards to define success. If you look at daily life that way, task driven, not identity driven, disability takes on a whole new face because there isn't a person who's not going to be disabled through their life. And that brings universality to it. And when I was saying I would go so far as to say that for a task, a child who is completely able bodied for their age is functionally disabled for a certain task. If they lack the strength, dexterity, coordination, wisdom to do things a certain way, then they are not able to do that task and therefore are functionally disabled of doing it. And when you start to think that way of a baseline, then you start to think differently about universal design and
mm.
how it should really connect all of us because we all started that way. Somebody, I don't remember who brought it up, but it's almost like the riddle of the Sphinx. You know, four legs, two legs, three legs. Well, that's such a
Yeah.
universal concept that it goes back to ancient Greece. And understanding that, I think, really should shape more of what we do.
Hmm. What was the aha moment that made you commit to the shape of the build, for the reality of what people would now use as
You know, it frankly is other people. And the one thing I've learned the hard way in my entrepreneurial journey is don't sit on an idea. Um, Chances are somebody
Yeah.
already has come up with it. So to hold it and not develop it because you think someone's going to steal it doesn't
No.
make a whole lot of sense. So my aha moment was when I brought it inside and my dad and the rest of my family even because he we had an interesting relationship but with him living with me he would love to come out in the
Sure.
shop and see things and he was like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. And then when my kids and the rest of the family were like, that's a great idea, and then one of my now partners saw it when I brought it to a
Huh.
party we were both at and was like, we have to develop it. And I think that is the kind of thing that helps you either pivot
Yeah.
or commit when people say
Yeah.
you should make this. Um, and I do think that, and it's off topic, but on topic, with ideas like this, people think that, oh, you want to wait till you get a patent. The patent system is highly broken in our country, totally different show. But if you're basing your decision to share an idea and get critical feedback to be able to either commercialize it a different way or go to market quickly, then you're doing yourself a disservice because I believe in IP. I hope that we reestablish that right, but it doesn't mean that you don't go for it. You
Mm.
just have to figure out different moats to protect yourself.
How did your corporate experience shape your approach to kind of problem solving and getting it out to market?
I think that um, I think that let me phrase it a different way. Um, I've always thought that a way to kind of bring prosperity back is in the small business world. I think that,
Mm.
and by small business, it does. There are these, plumbers and things like that, right? It's an important part of it. But when I think of like innovation
Yeah.
and even product innovation, um, what allows for quick prototyping, quick changing of your messaging, and all of that has to come at a startup level. And you people in corporate America would echo that. They would look and say, when we do an acquisition, we pay too much because we don't know how to do it anymore. So my experience in corporate America was generally that obviously there's an imbalance in how people are compensated, but there's also a risk imbalance because there's been a a culture and that cuts across companies about I don't want to lose my job, right? Because ultimately it's hard to support a family with health insurance and all the other things if you don't have a job. Corporate
Mm.
America provides that, but taking risk puts that agreement in peril.
Yeah.
And it's sad to me because I don't know the degree that people understand how they're institutionalized
Mm.
until they get outside of the institutionalized system.
Yeah.
And then they get out and they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to make a decision. They might be running their own business and they're looking for permission.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think that the best thing that could happen would be that small, scrappy entrepreneurs, people who are trying to do stuff like me, get the
Hustle mode.
opportunity to try things and build companies and challenge the status quo.
I love it. Yeah. That would explain same thing in the nonprofit world. It's, it's the same thing. There's so many out there doing different things or various things similar, but it's taking that plunge and not asking permission, but
Well,
having people say, "That's a great idea. I don't think anyone's doing it." So
and
that's
the
how
difference, it's
Swagability
interesting for
started.
me when
Yeah,
I look at how things are right now, and there's a ton of lip service about small business, job creation, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
we have an antithetical structure to allow to do that.
yeah,
And I just hope that it's really interesting. Like when now talking about bringing industry back, and I think everybody would love that. But is it the factory jobs or is it the next Henry Ford? Like it's great. People working in factories are a great thing. But
mm,
if we want to bring anything back here, we have to bring back things like product innovation. The number of people that I meet who are blown
yeah,
away that I've committed to making a product and hopefully will make other products is hilarious to me and
yeah.
sad.
Let's turn our attention to that product that you've got there and, you to display it and to talk about it, but describe the knife and the circular cutting geometry for our audience, how it can be used and, yeah, the not only geometry, but mm,
So I like to start with this. I'm sorry. I'm
definitely.
super ADD, so I didn't mean to cut you off. But that's another one of my disabilities. Um, so this I love using this knife. First thing, it was made by the
Yeah,
man who taught me how to make knives. And to understand circular geometry, you have to understand linear geometry, which is traditional knife, right? Tip, blade, usually with a cutting edge,
yes,
transition, and handle. Now, this is really optimized for being aligned
yes,
this way. This being a very, very old multitasking tool, you have to think in terms of what type of tasks you would be doing. And I love this because it's kind of tribal and primitive looking, because this is when you would need a multitasker that could put food on the
yes,
table or defend you and then cut things as well. So this is by far
yeah,
one of the pivotal tools in
absolutely.
our development. But because it's the ultimate multitasker and it is dependent on this as a primary use, it lacks efficiency to do its other tasks. Again, linear. So circular means that we got rid of the tip. We don't need it. This is totally safe. I could
Huh,
stab my hand all day with the tip. Nothing would ever happen. But what we've done is we've created a circle where your hand is the center of the circle. And this is what we call the primary grip, because there's 162
yes,
degrees of cutting area. And what you can do, I'm not at a countertop, but you can see I can find where on this blade I am most aligned for the
mm,
task I need to do. For somebody who doesn't have any issues, it just means efficiency. But for somebody who has limitations, it means that, like, if I can only move my wrist to here, I can use this part of the blade to cut. If I'm more in a direct cutting area, I can find where I'm in a neutral position. And it's so efficient, I only have to hold it this lightly. I am
mhm.
not even gripping it, I'm just
So,
stabilizing it,
mm,
because the efficiency means I don't have to grip it like I would
yeah,
a knife like this. If I'm using this knife, I have to grip it to transfer the force. My kinetic chain gone. So now all my cutting power is gone. But when you think in terms of a
mhm,
circle, I started this way. Now, if I hold it this way, the secondary way, now you can see I'm connecting with
yeah,
different parts of the blade. So I can use it like a cleaver and I can use it for precision cutting. So, it's a circular design. If you look in nature, the circle comes back often as a very, very strong shape, right? Like an arch, part of a circle. It's able to distribute weight a certain way. So that's where we really started to figure out if this universal design of the center of a circle and this being radii along a circumference that I can find the right radius, that's
Mhm.
direct transfer of force. And it makes it much easier for me to cut.
Well, this might, you probably just answered that, but who benefits the most? Arthritis, tremors, limited people with limited grip, spinal cord injuries?
You know what? It's very interesting.
Y
Um, the answer is yes, because what we're finding when I developed it,
yeah.
it was all about upper extremity, right? I've heard it said really well. It's hard to see the packaging from the inside of the box, right? Well, because my limitations were upper extremities, I was like, greatest thing ever, upper extremities. People have arthritis, people have tendonitis, people have all these things. We did an abilities
Mhm.
expo the month we got our first inventory. And the number of people who had upper extremity issues versus two other markets that I hadn't even thought of. One, vision impaired, because, and I'm going to try and line it up,
Yeah.
because the way you hold this, oh, wait, let me turn, there we go.
Yes.
Um, it's perfect alignment. So people who have vision impairment now
Right.
know where that blade is with much more
At their
control
fingertip.
than they otherwise would with a
Yes.
regular knife that can have a little bit of a moment arm effect. Sold several of them. The most people we sold to were people that are partially or permanently in a
Ye
wheelchair, because if
yes.
you're using a regular knife, you can never get the leverage
Yep.
that most people do when they're standing, because now this is
Yep.
direct force. It's almost connecting your core to the blade.
Mm.
People who are cutting seated, and I love it because we talk about someone who might be in a wheelchair. Maybe you just want to sit at the counter and cut instead of stand. But what we found was you're able to cut in reverse as well. And almost, in an office chair, but you can
Yeah.
sit back and use the back end of the knife. So because the versatility allows the user to use it in a manner which works with their body, anybody who can at least grip it enough should be able to cut with some degree of
Well,
efficiency and proficiency, depending what they're cutting. Now, again, a traditional knife, you can't do that. It just has certain limitations in the strength of its design, because a traditional knife has the tip, which means that you lose a lot of those efficiencies that come with something. And I'll tell you, the interesting thing is, if you talk to a chef, and I'm going to pull a different knife here. It's not a chef's knife, but if you were to think of a normal knife, this is a Sayax I made like early on in my thing.
mm,
A normal chef will hold a knife like this, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to align their body to the blade. They're adapting their body to work with something that, while a great historical design,
mhm,
is not meant to use in that manner efficiently. The handle, in that
mhm.
case, becomes a
Yeah.
counterbalance to holding it in the center. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So when you say who would benefit, people who can't adapt their body to this design would benefit. And that's everybody.
And I would say for anyone with a spinal cord injury that's watching, that's higher than, a para, obviously a quad, like myself, yeah, with a tenodesis grip, which is just, when your wrists you've got wrist movement to straighten your hand back, you create enough of a V in your hand to grip the knife, and it won't be long, and I'll be using that knife, and I'm looking forward to that. But I know watching Doug use it, and I'll ask him to demonstrate in a minute that as long as you can get a tenodesis grip where your thumb meets the basically the palm of your hand, you're able to slip that in, or if you use a cuff, I know Doug is and his team is looking at so how it would fit into the universal cuff that goes around our wrist, that would easily slip into that, and so then you would have that perfect alignment and when you don't have the upper body ability to chop or whatever, you still have the ability to pull towards you with your bicep. Um, and I think any quad should add this if they're cutting for themselves in the kitchen. To me, this is by far
Yeah, I could not ask for more of a
a plug or an
uh,
advertisement.
great description. And yeah, yeah, I'm kind of speechless because I love that, and that is the thing. The two things that we've heard from the market are food stabilization and grip stabilization, basically. So ways
Mhm.
to tether it better, and because
Yeah.
sometimes things are bilateral, the ability to not necessarily have to
Mhm.
hold the food in place. But it's been the thing I love about the market is
Yeah.
just your description is what we find everywhere, where it's all about the solution and a gratitude of trying to develop more things for more independence. And it's interesting. You asked like my experience in corporate America. One of the challenges we run into with pitching this to people is,
Mhm.
will it make enough money? And I'm always kind of astounded by it because maybe not, but everybody's going to get old. So more products that come to market like this that people can support and put capital behind and bring more into the mainstream ether of
Mhm.
acceptance of universal design, the better life every one of us is going to have when we're all on, the back nine and maybe, the 18th hole.
Yeah, some of us start a little sooner, but at some point, I had this conversation the other day is that somebody at some point, every one of us is gonna be differently abled or you wanna use to keep the word disabled, fine. It's you're going to be less able than you are today, and it's coming for all of us. It's no one has escaped. Only one person I know of walked out of life alive, my savior, but on top of that,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's
I mean, listen,
that
I used to play rugby. There were plenty of rugby games I played where I was pretty much disabled for a
yeah,
week after that, right? Like, I agree with you, and I think people are too connected with permanence for the
yeah,
definition, and they forget too
mm,
quickly. There's so many, and myself included, when I got my shoulder rebuilt or whatever, right? Wow, this sucks, but you know that there is a a finite amount of
mhm,
time that you will be inconvenienced. And I just wish more people would look and say, wow, this is someone's state of being all
mm.
the time.
Can you show us the grip again before I move on to more questions?
Absolutely.
What are the different grip options and cutting motions you can use with this knife?
Now, I call this, again, we call this the primary one because ultimately, if you look how I'm
Yes,
aligned right now, my body's basically aligned with this
yes,
blade, but because I'm not trying to move from here where the handle would be, it's direct force
mm,
transfer. One thing interesting, and when people ask me about gripping this, what I tell them is, if you were creating a cutting robot that was going to cut
mhm,
vegetables, it wouldn't look like this. You would be trying to align a piston of some sort with a cutting edge where you're cutting,
mm.
right? So in this case, for the front edge and the primary one, right, I'm able to cut this way. This is the motion. And
And those are sharp, eh? So that's brilliantly sharp, those edges.
this is sharp here, yes.
Yeah,
And then if I'm chopping, again, I'm aligned. If I'm
yeah,
working in reverse, this is sharpened as well. And then
mhm.
sometimes I want to chop this way. Again, the motion, the direction of the force matches where the blade is for efficient transfer.
And that's sharp on the base as well.
It's sharp on the base. So this is where we're patent pending. This is 162 degrees of cutting surface. I
Yes,
actually even use this. I'll align it. Let's say I'm um, cutting a rind on something. I use this
yeah,
where the transition is because it's a nice little tip. Now,
mm,
we talked about the reverse grip, and I think people overthink it.
mhm,
It's where my fist is aligned, right? So if I'm doing a like a cleaver type thing, I'm going this way, it's right where my fist is lined. That's where the force transfer is. If I'm using the precision edge, then it's right where the force is. So
Mm,
what we try to do is walk that really tight rope between here's the recommended way to use it, and we do recommend this being primary just because you have more edge utilization. But again, don't overthink it. What's cool is because it's not like a normal knife where you have to reposition your grip to use it in different ways. My partner Gordon, he laughs. He's like, "You're impossible to film because you keep switching." And I my what would make me the most happy would be for that to be spread as people start using it and going, okay, I guess the best description I give, this is going to date me. Um, there's a an exercise piece of equipment called the Bowflex, right?
yes.
And actually, if you look at like a total gym now, like the Chuck Norris Total Gym, which is
Yeah.
basically like both of them are pulley based, which means that your directional engagement with the weight will change how that
Yeah.
exercise works. There's a lot of it to this. So I'm in my mind sometimes trying to say, okay, I did own a Bowflex and I do own a Total Gym, but I try and think about the instructions that come with it. Say, here are these great recommended exercises that we know will target certain things, but in there's
Hmm.
always stuff to say, kind of have a you know develop your own things as long as they're safe. We would love to see more of that at NULU where people say, hey, I used it this way, and go, oh my God, I don't even think you used it that way. So that's.
Speaking of that, you said you've been to the Disability Expo and I'm sure some other shows. What type of reactions are you seeing from people that try it for the first time?
What we're finding is those who need get it. So there's two groups that have been really, really, they'll just walk up and go, I totally get it. They're like, you don't do your pitch, just give me one.
Yeah.
The disabled community or the less able community look and they're like, I totally get it. Because it's not, there are some aspects of it that are unique and innovative, and that's what we're patenting. But again, it's the new Ulu, right? The Ulu worked, just nobody really stopped and said, well, why did it work really well? Can we make it better? So that community, but people who cut a lot,
Mm,
because the other side of an inefficient cutting design is fatigue, repetitive stress injury, becoming disabled because you're using an inefficient design for the task you're doing. So we actually have several affiliates who are homesteaders because they either butcher a lot of animals or cut a lot of vegetables in
mm,
harvest season when they're canning. And they look and they're like, oh, I get it. Because then I can cut all day long and not feel pain at the end. We would love to get into commercial kitchens. It's a little bit heavier lift, but the response we get when I went to the Abilities Expo, this young lady walked up and she said, I'll take two of them. And I said, do you want to try it? Like, you could do a demo. No, no, I totally get it. I own an Ulu and I lost it and I hunt, and that would be very good
mm,
for processing the meat. So coming in the future, we're looking at improvements to take the efficiency of the design for other tasks because that's really the next frontier, right? How can you just make things work better without necessarily having to redefine it? So there's some really cool, innovative things that were coming through, but and this was a vision that Gordon and I, because we were the two founders, we brought other people along, and we haven't changed the culture. But a big part of it is never losing connection with the people who do get it. So the reason I said earlier at the Abilities Expo, it was a dream to have people coming up and saying, what would be cool? People
yeah.
are literally giving you ideas of how to better serve them.
Before we go, couple quick questions. Um, how can caregivers and veterans leverage these tools, um, and uh, and get them into their homes, and not just even those people, but anyone. How can we all get get one? Where can we purchase them from?
It's interesting. I actually just wrote an article about that, and some of it's algorithmic. I think if more people searched for universal design or adaptive design, we're working right now to get momentum in our Amazon store, and categories for products are heavily
Okay.
driven by that. So the algorithms don't care, but they know if there's demand. So help drive demand by, if you believe in universal design and adaptive design, start putting it into your search criteria. Start when you're engaging with AI because it's scraping the internet. Start asking what great products are out there, because AI enabled search a lot of times is better at finding things because it ain't pay to play. You're going to find the
Mhm.
better products. So I think that helps. I think recommending and gifting those type of products. Um, I think we sell a lot to people who are buying them
Mm.
for a parent. Um, but it is just continuing to drive the just the lexicon of how we do all this stuff, right? Like adaptive isn't bad, universal isn't bad. You know, everything has a place, and being open minded. Um, and maybe that's the biggest part, right? Like I don't train as much now. I'd like to get back into it, but I used to do martial arts. I did a martial art called Aikido, and I think they all share this. But there's an aspect in martial arts of the beginner's mind. It's more of a Japanese concept, I think, than the entirety of Asia, but I could be speaking out of turn and be completely wrong. But my connection to it is Japanese, because Aikido is a Japanese martial art. But the beginner's mind is walking, and I think actually the whole story of like the black belt is you come in as a white belt and you train so much that your belt becomes black from sweat, and then you clean it and you start again. And if people could have that open mind, which we're in short supply of these days, but to try new things and accept new things, then that's what drives innovation. So I think that's the start. And if people can do that, then what can't we accomplish?
Absolutely. And lastly, where we can tell you, if you go to SwagAbility and go to our product store, you'll find the NULU knife featured in there. And
And we're so psyched to have you as an
yeah,
affiliate, man. I love what you're doing in the space.
can't wait to get it into a number of uh, occupational therapists, but even getting it home and do a product review in our own studio. And can't wait to break that video. But if you appreciate what Doug's been doing, and I certainly do, show him some love. Go visit Linktree. He's on there. All his is it. Can you give me your channel? Is it Linktree forward slash
I think it's just Doug
Doug
Katz,
Katz?
and I've got a huge digital footprint.
Okay,
People can definitely find me, but I'm pretty adamant. If someone's buying, please use your
thank
link,
you.
your code,
Yes,
because that's part of where we're really trying to enable people who are spreading that gospel
yeah,
of
and
inclusion and adaptive and universal. Um, those are the affiliates that we want to
yeah,
empower through whatever we can do.
and we appreciate that so much. Doug Katz, everyone. Doug, it's been great. Love the story. Thank you for what you've done in giving us our freedom. We love our veterans and those who are serving, and we want to give back to them. We hope you saw many through this episode, and I'm looking forward to whether it's the NULU 2.0 or you come up with a swagability labeled knife. We're excited to have you back in the coming days to see what you've invented.
I love that. I love that. Limited edition.
Swag.
There you go. I love it. I love it. And again, I actually would love to hear your ideas once you use it, because as we're developing stuff, it super helps us.
And I'm sure that for others that are in the same boat, whether you have a disability that cerebral palsy or any other one there with not just a spinal cord injury, I'm sure. Um, but we'll put Doug's
Can
contact.
I add on one thing?
Yeah, absolutely can.
So I try and do this on everything I'm on, or every time I get a chance to talk. Is I as I said, I've had other businesses in the
Mm,
past that have been less successful, and part of this is a good team. I think it's a great product, but the help that I've received from anybody, uh, including like people I know and have a history with, or people that I just reached out to who said, I'll help you out. I'll give you 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour,
yeah.
whatever. So I believe in paying it forward. Any listener who is interested, on my link tree, you can schedule a time with me. And not that I'm any great brain, but um, I think that if I can ever help give some help on strategy, what I learned, anything like that, um, I want to help. So please don't be shy.
I've been a bless I've been a blessing to have that. Doug is it's amazing man, amazing mind, done so much for our country, and that includes Canada, as they've been a big brother to us for many years, and we have worked together at points. And I've had the privilege of off air being the recipient of just a great conversation. So I would take him up on that offer any day. Um,
I just watched the John Candy documentary, and we owe you guys for John Candy. So
there you go. Um, Friends, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the SwagAbility Show. Remember, our desire is to see you thrive wherever life finds you. Check out our YouTube channel, Swagability Inc., and check out our website, swagability.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, thrive where life finds you. Swags out.